Hi, everybody. Happy Tuesday and welcome inside the UPMC Rooney Sports Complex. I'm Missy Matthews, filling in today for Bob Pontieni. We are just moments away from head coach Mike Tomlin's weekly press conference to preview the upcoming game, also talk about the overtime loss to the Baltimore Ravens. Of course, a lot of people want to hear an update on quarterback Mason Rudolph, who suffered a concussion in the third quarter on Sunday at Heinz Field. The good news is Mason Rudolph was here at the Steelers practice facility on Monday. Seemed to be pretty upbeat, so awaiting word on that. We do know at this point he is in the concussion protocol, so it'll be a number of steps he is going to have to take to get back out onto the practice field. No update just yet in terms of who the starting quarterback will be on Sunday. Hoping to learn some information on that from Coach Tomlin today. Two other injuries we will possibly get an update on. James Washington left the game with a shoulder injury on Sunday, and also Mark Barron dealing with a hamstring injury. We do want to thank everybody here locally in Pittsburgh for watching on the Pittsburgh CW, and also everybody watching across the nation on the Steelers' various digital and social platforms. Of course, the Steelers are sitting at 1-4, heading back out to the West Coast for a primetime matchup on Sunday Night Football against the LA Chargers, who right now are sitting at 2-3. This matchup will feature a matchup of brothers, the Pouncey brothers, also the Watt brothers. So there is a lot we need to hear from head coach Mike Tomlin today, but I do think the injuries, that's the big one, especially the condition of Mason Rudolph. We saw what Duck Dynasty Devlin Hodges was able to do when he stepped in for him at the end of the game there. This is a guy who was a tryout during the Steelers rookie minicamp. Went with them through training camp. We saw him throughout the preseason, did not make the Steelers' initial 53-man roster. So we need to hear more from Coach. So let's head upstairs now. Coach Tomlin is at the podium.
As always, a quick assessment of the last performance. And really, I think I kind of outlined it some in the post game. I thought at the early stages of the game, field positioning, particularly in the first half, really kind of set the stage for the game. We didn't move the ball fluidly enough on offense. We turned the ball over. And it gave them the short field. In one instance, they turned that into 7 points, and I thought that was significant. I thought their kickoff team was significant with Tucker and his ability to hang the ball and allow those guys to cover great distances. We had a tough time gaining field position even in the kickoff return game because of his talents. I also thought field position was an issue because I thought it took us a while to warm up to the speed and athleticism, quite frankly, of Lamar Jackson. I thought as the game wore on, I thought we got comfortable with rushing and containing him and trying to minimize some of the things that he's capable of doing. I thought he got out on us some early. I think that's the first time us having been in a stadium with him as a starter and him being a down-in and down-out player, we had to acclimate ourselves to his talents. And I thought as the game wore on, I thought we did that. But at the early stages, whether it produced points or not, I thought it was significant in terms of the field positioning. We worked on the long field a lot, and they worked on the short field some. At the waning moments of the first half, we were able to deliver a couple of turnovers and get the ball on the short field, but we weren't able to punch those in. We settled for 3, and there's a price to pay for that. That's a common theme that we've been talking about. Not only the turnover game, our ability to protect and keep the ball, but also our ability to get the ball, but the subsequent drives that follow to complement each other in a positive way. And that's the offense producing touchdowns after turnovers, which we hadn't done to an acceptable level. You think about some of the short fields we were on in San Fran, for instance. We settled for 3, and we did similar things in this past game. So obviously we got some work to do there. And also from a defensive perspective, in terms of them supporting the offense when and if turnovers occur to minimize some of that damage, we got room for growth there. I thought that those were key things in terms of setting the stage, if you will, in terms of how the game unfolded. Obviously, we dealt with injury in game and losing Mason Rudolph and a few others, but I didn't think that was significant in terms of the outcome of the game. I really like to look at the things that are within our control and the people that are on the field, because we buy into the standard being the standard. And the guys that were on the field were penalized too much. I didn't mention that, but I thought that was an element of play. Cadence was not a weapon for us, and cadence usually is and has to be a weapon for us, particularly when we're at Heinz Field. it wasn't. I think we had 5 collective pre-snap penalties on offense and on defense, and that's just below the line. So if you want to summarize why we didn't get the job done, field positioning early, the turnover game and the subsequent drives relative to it, and our performances along those lines, and the penalty game I thought was significant. From an injury standpoint, Mason Rudolph is in the concussion protocol. He was in the building yesterday. He appears to be doing fine just in terms of communicating with him. But obviously I won't have a lot of detail in terms of where he is in the protocol, or speculating what that is and the timetable of it, because I've been at this long enough to know that I'm not a medical expert. We got a great deal of confidence in our medical experts and the independent neuro people that are involved in his process, and they'll do their due diligence. And when he's available to us, he's available to us. But just from interacting with him and seeing him, it's good to see him. Obviously, he appears to be doing fine and has expressed that, and that's really all I have in terms of intimate details regarding him or his status or what the week could potentially look like. I just don't want to get into the speculation. That could be endless. But there were some other injuries in game. Some we mentioned, some we didn't. Just want to highlight it. James Washington is still being evaluated with his shoulder. He's probably got questionable availability. Mark Barron also with his hamstring. Steve Nelson is new with a groin injury. We'll monitor him and his participation throughout the week and let that be our guide for his availability. And the new one significantly to mention is Jalen Samuels had his knee scoped yesterday. He had a knee sprain. He's roughly going to be out a month, but as we get closer through this process, we'll know what the timetable looks like in terms of that. That's something that showed up after the game, even after I visited with you guys, or while I was visiting with you guys after the game. We had him evaluated and saw that was necessary, so we made the decision to fix it ASAP, and it was fixed yesterday. Those things being said, there may be some subsequent moves from a personnel standpoint to fill out the ranks, but I don't have any intimate details there. We got some time in which to do that, and a lot of the candidates are practice squad-like guys, and so they're here working and available to us anyway. So I won't have any expanded dialogue along how we fill in the ranks or who's who in that regard. Some of the previous guys that have dealt with injury appear to be moving in a positive way. We'll see and check their availability based on participation through the week. Those guys are Chicolo and Rosie Nix, and Vance McDonald, who missed the previous game, appears to be no worse for the wear with his participation in the last performance. Now we turn our attention to the LA Chargers, man. Excited about competing against those guys. Really, quite frankly, I always am, because it's always a really challenging thing when you're competing against the likes of Phillip Rivers and what he brings, not only in terms of his talents, but his football intellect and the amount of latitude he's given at the line of scrimmage. We acknowledge that we're playing him in his home environment, and recently we played him here in Pittsburgh, so it's probably going to have added opportunity to infuse his intellect and know-how on the game at the line of scrimmage via communication and so forth. We better have a good package and plan. Excited about doing that. I know last year when we played him, we were without a number of sub-package defenders, and as the game wore on, he really exploited that. It's good to kind of go in and hopefully with a full complement of sub-package defenders and guys that are capable of matching up against his many weapons, and he's got some. Allen and Williams are really outstanding outside. Travis Benjamin is a take the top off the coverage-like guy. We know him from his time here in the AFC North when he was with Cleveland. They got quality tight ends, are capable of getting after you as well. Their running back group is well stocked now that Melvin Gordon is back. Boy, they got a real awesome group at their disposal with a variety of talent. And as is always the case when you're without someone, other people develop. You find other talents and uses for people, and it's evident that they've done that. They're doing a really good job of getting 30 the ball, both in the backfield and outside the backfield. Seeing more touches from Derek Watt and others. So we're going to be really challenged. But make no mistake, the challenge starts with the guy under center and what he's capable of doing. Just got a lot of respect for him, but at the same time really enjoy competing against him from a competitor standpoint. On the defensive side of the ball, they're really fundamental. They get after you. They play fast. If you're talking about their defense, I think it starts with Bosa and Ingram. They're quality first-round edge rushers. Those guys provide the wave that others ride in terms of their consistent pressure on the quarterback. We better stay on schedule. You get behind the chains with a young quarterback versus this group, you're going to have a problem. They're very multiple on the back end, particularly on possession downs. They use a variety of personnel groups, and that allows them to match up in unique ways and present a lot of things to a quarterback. So we got our work cut out for us in terms of preparing our guys and putting together a plan that highlights the people that are available to us, forget who's not available to us. We're going to spend our time and energy talking about the utilization of the people that are and what's best in terms of highlighting their skills and putting ourselves in position to go into a hostile environment and win a football game. And so that's our focus. I'll be happy to address any questions you might have.
Coach, so much was made about the situation with Mason Rudolph over the weekend when he went down. They found it very disturbing. How annoyed were you that the cart did not function, and did you investigate on your own as to what happened?
Let me be clear, because I really didn't know what you guys were talking about when you asked me after the game, to be quite honest with you. There are 2 carts in our stadium. There's probably 2 carts in every stadium. He walked off the field because he chose to walk off the field, and the medical experts were comfortable with his ability to walk off the field and the safety in it. Whether or not the cart was functioning is irrelevant to the fact that he walked off the field. And to be quite honest with you, I didn't know that the cart wasn't functioning until after the football game, because I was more concerned with Mason. As he got himself together and was able to walk off the field, he was dialoguing with me and others, and that's really kind of where our attention was. I didn't realize that the cart story was such a story, even when I addressed you guys after the game.
Did you find it unusual the way he was walking off the field, having to be carried off by 2 people?
No, not because, number one, I'm not a medical expert, and the people that we have a great deal of trust in were there with him. They made the decision that it was safe for him to do so. He had a desire to do so, and so we didn't analyze that overly, no.
Mike, you mentioned that there could be some shuffling with the practice squad guys given some of the injuries. Are you comfortable with the quarterbacks you have in the building going into Sunday's game, or could there be outside guys brought in?
I'm comfortable.
Mike, if Mason goes through the protocol and comes through a clear suit, will he play that Sunday?
Again, I'm not getting into the hypotheticals. It's just too many of them, and we're too far out, and that's why I opened the press conference the way I did in terms of giving you a little dialogue about that scenario.
Mike, now that you've had time to watch film of Devlin, you've obviously seen him in camp. What are your impressions of how he did?
Really, no different than my impressions that I had of him throughout this process, and most of which I've expressed to you guys. He has an awareness and savvy or moxie about him that's beyond his experience. And it was evident in Latrobe. He carried it into preseason stadiums, and now he's given us a little insight that he's capable of carrying it into regular season stadiums. So it's all positive. Obviously, he lacks a lot of experience in the things that go with experience, but I like his demeanor. I like his steady Eddie attitude and approach to it, and I think it's an asset to him and to us in the present circumstance.
You mentioned staying on schedule with the offense, with the young quarterback in that stadium against that defense. Does that mean you need to run the football better than you have or more than you have?
It just means we need to stay on schedule.
Now that you've had a couple games without Ben Roethlisberger quarterback, how much of a challenge has that been for you as a coach and for your team as players that be out there without him?
We're not spending a lot of time analyzing our performance based on who we don't have. We spend a lot of time analyzing our performance based on the tools at our disposal, the personnel, the time of prep, and so forth. So I don't know that I have an answer to that. I've just been so singularly focused on the preparation of who's playing that it hadn't been a lot of time to cry over the spilled milk.
Mike, in terms of managing the players on the team and the week-to-week game planning, what experiences do you draw on in terms of running a team in week 6 with a third-string undrafted rookie?
I've been in this thing long enough that it's all pretty much a rerun to me. The last time we were out in to play the Chargers. They were in San Diego, and I think we were with our fourth quarterback that Monday night game. So, if you thankful enough to do this job long enough, it all becomes a rerun in some form or fashion.
When you talk about the return game, the kickoff return game, was it the dissatisfaction with your guys, or was it more what Tucker was doing to make?
Both, because we always focus on the things that are within our control. We didn't block well enough. But you also got to acknowledge that things don't happen in a vacuum. Man, Tucker was awesome in that football game, but not that we're surprised by that, man. He's as dynamic as they come in that regard. That's one of the reasons why from time to time Baltimore will introduce a rule that says you get a point for putting the kickoff through the upright. I don't know that anybody else has got a guy that would make them want to present that rule to ownership. That just speaks to his talents, and it was on display. He did an awesome job.
Mike, how do you change or improve what you do? Is it how you do it, or how you do it, or who you do it with?
Both. We're still very much in the growth stages in terms of individually getting better and improving and gaining more detail in our work, positioning, eyes, rate of play, speed of play. But we're also getting better as a staff in terms of finding that division of labor and leaning on the strengths and working to minimize the weaknesses of the collective group. So we're still very much developing in all ways in that regard.
Like the words that you used to describe Hodges, I think you said awareness, savvy, some moxie in there as well. Do those characteristics of him allow you to keep the playbook open to a larger degree than what you would consider for a usual third-string quarterback?
I think we'll make those judgments based on what we see during the course of the week. What you do with a guy that steps into a game in-game is different than what you do with a guy based on 6 or 7 days prep time. So, if I'm legitimately answering those questions, I have to wait through this process to see his performance over the course of the week. When you send a guy in to finish a game, he has a lot less exposure, a lot less in-helmet preparation, a lot less preparedness, to be quite honest with you.
Mike, in general, in the return game, how much of the onus do you put on the returner to make the first guy miss, or does he need better blocking to have a chance to make the first guy miss?
I think it's a little bit of everything that you suggested, and sometimes one outweighs the other. It just depends on the nature of the return, the amount of space, and so forth. But make no mistake, it's dual responsibility. When you have a dynamic kickoff return game, it's because you got guys that block well, and you got a returner that's vertical and is capable of making people miss.
What would your reaction have been if you would have been told before the season at this point you've been going with the guy who didn't make the final 53-man roster at quarterback?
I'm not into the hypotheticals.
How much have you guys put into this offense that specifically deals with Samuel's unique skill set, and how much is that a part of the loss you're going to deal with without him, in addition to just his presence as a talented running back?
Like we said in here the other week when we were dealing with circumstances, we had red paint, so we painted our barn red. Okay, now maybe yellow. We'll continue to lean on the strengths of our collective group and work to minimize the weaknesses. Obviously, when Jalen was a part of us, he was a guy that we could lean on and a guy that had some experience, some in-game experience and some playmaking ability and some versatility. Now that he's not, we'll continue to spin the dial and lean on the strengths, the collective strengths of the group.
You've said a number of times about not making excuses. What if you see somebody going down that road as a player? What is your reaction to them?
I don't anticipate that, and like I've said repeatedly, I'm not big into the hypotheticals. We got a right-minded group. We got a group that's competitive by nature, a group that's pissed off, to be quite honest with you, and appropriately so, but not misplaced or displaced. We don't see ourselves as misfortunate. We've had control and opportunity to win these games, and our record is our record, and so we're bringing that approach to our preparation. That's my level of expectation, and I don't waste a lot of time hypothesizing about any other.
Like two guys in your secondary, beyond the turnovers, obviously, that he created against San Francisco, where has Fitzpatrick helped you since he got here? And I know you just said he was hurt, but Nelson, why or how has he been good for you since coming on board from Kansas City?
Both guys are professional. Both guys are really low maintenance. Both guys are really good preparers. the things that they do, their personal relationship with the game, to watch them move around during the course of a work week, how they take notes, the things that they do and walk through and in practices. They're both low maintenance and, in that regard. They take a mature approach to prep, and I think that's why they're capable of delivering consistent varsity performance. I still think we're really getting to know both guys, but obviously we got a larger sample size of Nelson than we do Mika, but really positive reviews from both thus far.
And if Nelson is hampered at all, is it Artie then that steps up and takes most of those snaps?
Again, we'll see. I'm not ready to count Nelson out at this juncture, so I don't want to get into, speculation.
From what you've seen of Snell and his progression, is he ready to take a bigger role?
I believe that he is. I know that he's chopping at the bit to be a contributor. He's a high energy young guy. He's been highly productive in special teams, and usually production in special teams is an indication of offense and defensive readiness. I mean, this guy's making tackles on coverage units and stuff. It's been really impressive, but obviously we drafted him to play running back. He'll probably get an opportunity to get some more exposure there because of the injury to Jalen, and I'm sure he'll be excited about it.
Mike, do you get the sense that your defense is coalescing and that you've turned a corner as a unit?
I don't know that I'm looking for that. I'm just looking for wins and leaning on the collective strength of our group in all three phases. And because we got more regulars available to us in that phase of our football team, it's reasonable to expect those guys, to carry the charge, if you will. So I think that they understand that there's a heightened urgency in terms of their performance based on current circumstances, and that's what team is about, and that's what team sports are about.
Last week you said that if you got into the field position game with the Ravens, it wouldn't end well. Are you more disappointed that you got in a field position game or how you performed under the circumstances?
I don't know about levels of disappointment and what's more disappointing than the other. I just know that, the game didn't unfold the way that we would like it, the way that we prepared for it to. None of it was unanticipated, and such is life, man. That's why we roll our sleeves up and work with great urgency and get singularly focused on this next opportunity, because that one's in the rear view. We don't get it back.
Hodges said that Ben told him he was fearless during training camp. Is that a good thing in a game, or can that be a detriment?
Fearlessness is good, particularly at that position.
How surprised were you to hear that you were mentioned as a preferred candidate to be the next head coach of the Washington Redskins?
I'm not worried about that, to be quite honest with you. You were the first person to mention it to me in a public setting. So,
what was your reaction in a private setting?
About the same I'm giving you. Guys, I'm the head coach of a 1-4 football team that's going on the road to play a Hall of Fame caliber quarterback with my third quarterback. You think I'm worried about anything this week other than that?
Anyone else? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, our thanks again once again to everybody in the Pittsburgh area watching locally on Pittsburgh CW. Also to fans nationwide on the various Steelers social and digital platforms for watching head coach Mike Tomlin's press conference. A quick recap of all of the injuries he mentioned today. As you know, Mason Rudolph is currently in the concussion protocol. Coach says he appears to be fine, but has no timetable, on when he will be able to return to practice yet and even play in a game. So we will really have to pay attention tomorrow, Wednesday, when the Steelers resume practice here at the UPMC Rooney Sports Complex. Some other bad news in terms of injuries. Jalen Samuels had his knee scoped on Monday. Coach anticipates the Steelers will be without him for approximately a month. And then guys he's calling questionable right now. James Washington with that shoulder injury, Mark Barron with a hamstring injury, and a new injury to add to the list. Steve Nelson is dealing with a groin. We do want to remind you, as the Steelers prepare this week to head west to face the LA Chargers on Sunday Night Football, make sure you tune into KDKA on Saturday night at 11:35 following the late news for the Mike Tomlin Show. Recap the entire week, get you ready for that prime time matchup. And of course, on Sunday following the game, we will have live post-game coverage on Steelers.com and all the Steelers social and digital platforms. That's going to do it here inside the UPMC Rooney Sports Complex. I'm Missy Matthews. We'll see you next time.